Right then, me and Adam are back. We're in the middle of summer, there's a heat wave, the fish have finished spawning. It's a great time to target some margin fish, and we're at the beautiful Larford Lakes to do some bagging. Welcome to the second episode of the Ministry of Bait. I'm Les Thompson, and over the coming months I'm going to be taking you around the amazing world of Sonubaits. I'll be showing you how to mix, blend, soak and prep using all of our classic mixes like Match Method Mix, F1 and Super Crush. Whilst at the same time I'm going to be keeping up to date with all things new like our chocolate orange, chunky fish and super feeder. From pellets to wafters, from my bait room to the bank, I'll be showing you how to get the best from the Sonubaits range. So welcome to the Ministry of Bait. Right then, we're here, Match Lake 16. A few of you might be wondering why we're in the kitchen. It's just far too warm, it's close to 30 degrees. But like I say, we're on Match Lake 16, great peg, great peg. It's got lilies, which can cause a problem, but we've got some kit with us that can sort that out. And it's got a beautiful long edge, and it's normally good for fish all year round, but this time of year when they finish spawning, it's normally great to get amongst some big margin fish. We'll show you how to get the best out of the bait and the rigs that we can use to put more fish in your net. Right then, let's have a look at some bait that's going to get us some edge pigs. Dead simple for me, margin fishing. I like to keep it around this centre of baits. Ground bait, dead maggots, worms, corn and fishery pellets. It's fishery pellets at Larford, otherwise I'll be using our Pro Feed or Imperfect. The choice of ground bait for me, old favourite, margin carp. Great little mix, lots of particles in there, some hemp, fish meal, dried bits of corn, absolutely perfect, but it's the particle size that is the key for me, and we'll touch more on that later. And this new mix that we've got, the old chunky fish, it's a little bit different to other ground baits because it's not just pellets that are in there. We've got dehydrated crushed fish chunks in there, so it's really got a real pungent smell of fish, and like literally you mix this stuff up and it's turning anglers' heads as well as fish. So I like to use that in a 50-50 mix. The maggots, absolutely spot on for this time of year. After the fish have finished spawning, I always find that this is a bait that works really well. I'll feed a few as loose offerings and bunches on the hook. Double corn, one thing that's always been a constant with me over the years, double dendy and bunches of dendy, always finds your fish. And on the pellet side of things, banded pellets, and again it's more of a particle size of things. I don't want particles wishing and washing everywhere. 6 mils, 8 mils, dead simple. Let's just show you how I mix this up. First of all, the chunky fish. This mix is dead simple, depending on quantity. I'm going to put just 50-50 like I always do. Sometimes I measure it out if I don't think I'm going to use that much, but today there's a lot of fish moving about. I'm just going to mix up the 2 bags, 50-50, in we go. There's that chunky fish. As you can see, all the bits of the crushed pellets, little bits of dehydrated fish are in there, and just before you even mix it, it's that pungent, and it's just, fish meal content is so high compared to other ground baits. Then I've got the margin carp, and this for me is all about particle size, like I say. So we got that one in there. You'll be able to see on top of that what I said about particle size, all those little bits of hemp and corn again, and fish meal. Now there's one thing, I'm doing this on the bank now, but I've already got a mix, Blue Peter style, like we always do. So I'll just twist that round. That was done the night before, so I'll just turn all those particles over. So now that mix has turned to chunky fish with all those extra particles that are going to bed down on the bottom. But the important thing about mixing this the night before is I want those bigger particles like corn and the little bits of seed that are in there and the bigger chunks of pellet. I want them to take on the maximum amount of water they can, because I'm going to overwet the mix. But if I was to be mixing this on the day, I don't want particles popping up off the bottom, stopping on the surface, because then I start to get fish moving all over the place, and that's a problem you don't want when you're margin fishing. You want your fish concentrated. So then I'll just show you quickly exactly the amount of water you need to put in for overnight. So we're just going to load it up, and all this will be taken on board by all these particles. Give it a blast, and it'll look if you look at that, it looks like we've blown the mix. It just looks like a complete pile of stodge and mess, but trust me, by the time the morning comes, that will have been all dried out like the mix I've got up there. It dries out, it's a quick blast with the drill again, on with the riddle, and then when I get to the peg, I'll over wet it for the consistency I want it to fish in the margin, because I always like my ground bait on the wetter side, because I want it to sink and get to the bottom, so it'll allow me to feed it loose or just with a slight squeeze. Right then, I did say that I like to do that mix the night before, and there it is. When I showed you before, it was literally flooded and stodgy. Then it goes stiffer than a wedding night lover, and then basically it's back in the... Are you laughing? Are you laughing? Ad's laughing. What are you laughing at, Ad? Anyway, so it gets stiffer, it's stodgy, then it's stiff, and then it's all in the bucket, so you just need to basically give it a turn. Sometimes I'll need to riddle it, but this is... It's mainly at the bottom where the water and everything, it's all back through now, that's all nice and loose. But what I like to do is just over wet it, because I'm not using it out in the lake, and I'm not looking to fish in depths with it. I'm looking to fish in 12 to 18 inches, and I just want it to get down and work how I want it to work, but we'll talk about that a bit later on when we're fishing. So I'm just going to over wet this now to that point where it takes on that little bit more. There you go, that's perfect. You can actually feel it just feels heavy in your hand. It's absolutely perfect. I can feed that loose, so all that's going to break through, create a cloud, or I can just give it a little squeeze, and there's lots of weight in there. It's crammed with particles and full of things that fish love. Let's get this on the table and let's catch some fish. Right then, baits on the table. Let's have a look how we're going to attack the peg. Obviously it's margin fishing, so it's not going to be rocket science, but fishing margins and edges is not just about jamming the float right in against the bank and there's going to a magical amount of fish going to appear for you. That's not the way it works. And obviously, because we've waded out into the water at Larford, we haven't got the advantage of having a pallet to fish through, so we haven't got a little bit more depth, so everything here is sloping away from us, so we've got nothing, so the margin needs to be fished a little bit further away from the bank. So what am I looking for? For me, 12 to 18 inches is the perfect sort of depth that I want. It's a depth that's going to give the fish confidence to feed, confidence to move in on bait. I mean, if you think about it, if I try and fish in something less than that, some of these fish that can be coming into this margin can be that deep in depth themselves. So if I'm fishing in this sort of a depth, 6 inches, they're half out the water, they're submerged. It's not a situation where, sometimes it can work, but it's not a situation that I want to be trying to catch fish in. I want to be hooking with confidence. They clear the peg, other fish remain in the peg. So 12 to 18 inches. And that's what I've found just about 2 meters away from the bank to the right, 13 meters away from myself. That side, I'm going to be fishing groundbait and maggots. Just perfect for that sort of, like I've said, this time of year, groundbait and maggots. For some reason, dead maggots work fantastically well. I've got lots of confidence in it, so that's going to go that side. And because I always put 2 different sets of lines in with different baits, this side is going to be pellets and corn. So I've got an option, which one works best, I can switch it. But this side's a little bit different. I've got lily pads, I've got reeds, I've got a little crow's foot bed, there's lots of root systems and things. So I don't really want to be playing around in that sort of stuff and smashing my prize pole. So for that, I get a different bit of kit, what fits into the system with my pole, response margin. I can reach everything that I want with 8.5 meters, mega strong, still stiff in the action. And it's a great advantage to have something like that where I can just pick up the same kits that fit my pole, drop it down there, hook a big fish, and have confidence to tear it away with strong elastics, strong hooks, rip them fish away from that snag. And it's a bonus to get those fish in. Like I say, down there I'm going to find the same sort of depth, but because I'm near the snags, I must fish, in my opinion, something I've got confidence in, where I can give them that little bit more pressure without damaging my kit. Pellets and corn, groundbait and maggots. Let's have a look at the rigs. Dead simple, which is the best way to keep it. First of all, the top kit. Obviously I'm going to be using a power kit. We're trying to catch big margin fish, so we want a power kit. On the old favourite, the roller puller. There's one just jumped behind me, so there's a few about. So let's have a look at the elastic. The elastic is the 14 Dura Holler. Absolutely perfect for this sort of fishing. It's great to handle big fish, but it still gives me enough in the elastic, enough give to let them clear the peg on that initial run and allow other fish to stay there and not spook everything, have all this massive commotion. I'll be able to clear the peg, then the power kicks in and I can get that fish back. Main line, this was 019 power line, and because I'm down the margin, it's straight through. The float, one of the Dead Ship range, really popular range, great floats, margin 4B12s, nice, stable, thick hollow tip that's just not going to show me false indications, going to let me read the bites. Like I say, then I'm using stots, and you need stots on line this thing. If I was to use normal shot, literally they'll pop off like shirt buttons, ping 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 ping, as soon as he's had his big buffet gone every time I hook a fish. So we don't want that. We just want to just keep them nice, supple on the line, slide them to where I want to. Fantastic, nothing's going to come off. Then the hook. This is a real tasty piece of kit. It's a new hook that we've been doing for our up and coming sea drone range. It's the CD03, Teflon coated. Now these are designed primarily for the carp drones in Europe, and these guys are catching carp 10-15 kilo, excess of that, on poles. So fish of 5 and 6 kilo size at Larford Lakes ain't going to trouble them. They're mega strong, and you got more chance of basically straightening Dale Winton than you ever straighten one of these or Graham Norton end off. Can I say Dale Winton? He's passed away, hasn't he?
It's alright.
It's alright. Well, God bless you, Dale. We love you. Every time you hear the beep, used to love it. Anyway, that's how good those hooks are. That's the one rig. Next rig for the other side, which is by the snags, pretty much the same sort of thing really, except the elastic's a lot stronger. Next grade up, 16 Dura Holler, but the line is a much higher diameter, 024, again straight through, same hook, 14 size, CD03, and this float's a little bit different. It's an island and it's a 4x14. Because it is a tiny bit shallower that side, I've put the bigger float on because I want it to remain stable. And more than just one reason for fishing straight through, obviously for the strength reason, I don't want lots of knots, is I like to be able to move shot about. I want to move them down close, lag them on, move them away. I like to have the variation where I can move the shot away from different situations to stabilise a bait and things like that. So for me, stots and being able to move them up and down on thick line is what I want when I'm edge fishing. So that's that rig. And the last rig is a rig, obviously because I'm fishing pellets that side with corn and other upbaits, but over the last few years I've noticed when fish are boiling and getting really frenzied, it can become frustrating, you foul looking fish and all the rest of it. Catching shallow over the top of that ball that's going crazy, even though there's next to no depth there anyway, really works. And one of those rigs that I've been using is a 4x12 dibber with basically one of our new, this is now one of our new, I used to tie them up myself, but I've got ultimate confidence in using these, a KKM ready tied with one of our bands on, and that allows me just, even when they get tails up lined up all over the place, they're swirling everywhere, you can just lower this rig in and you're putting a big hook bait right in their eye line. All the particles are being churned up by tails and gill feed and everything's floating around, and you're right in amongst it all. Bang, you normally find the elastic rips out. It's caught me lots of fish, and I've got lots of confidence in that rig, so it's something I always set up. Doesn't always fire, but a lot of the time it does. Right, that's the rigs. Let's do some fishing. You'll do. So we've been fishing for a while, we've already had a few fish, and I just thought I'd run you through exactly how I kicked off the peg. I told you the baits I was going to use down those sides, but one thing I get asked a lot is by other anglers is, they say to me, I couldn't catch, I've had nothing down my edge, and then all of a sudden they've just rocked up too late, and I've fed it all day, and to me that's wrong. Margin fishing for me is all about timing and quantities. As a match angler and in match situations, I never automatically go straight out and start feeding margins from the start. I'm mindful of what's happening around me, watching other anglers, see if they catch a fish, then it'll prompt me, then I'll start feeding my margin. But until nearly 2 hours into a match, I wouldn't even be looking to feed a margin unless I was an end peg where I could positively attack it, or I could see a raft of fish. I'm always erring on the side of caution because I'm fishing pressurised waters. But if you do go down the route of crashing loads of bait in and then they suddenly rock up at 2:30, 3 o'clock, some people get excited and keep piling more bait in. It's like, whoa, they've come now, they're here. For me, those fish would have still started feeding at that time over just a small amount of bait. It's the time of day when they're confident to feed, so that's when they come looking, they come close to the bank, they know those sorts of times of day there's bait gets thrown there. They're sort of programmed, they know when it's safer to come in and the times that they want to come and graze. So if you start loading it up from the start, 20 minutes, half hour, a ball, 2 balls, or pot of pellets, that's the first lot of bait you've put there. Nothing's come, there's nothing in my margin, so I'll put a bit more in, By the time they actually want to feed, there's probably the best part of 5 pints of bait or 2 kilo of ground bait, and it just becomes one almighty mess. Foul lookers, tails everywhere, and it's not right. So I like to keep in control of it. So even though I'm the only one on the lake today, well, not the others, other lakes down there, but I'm the only one in this area, I can feed it a little bit different if I wanted to, but I've still erred on the side of caution. So I've given literally half a pot of 6 mils and some corn to the area with the lilies, so I can just see what comes in and feel my way into the peg like I would do in a match. And down this side I've done exactly the same to me right, just a bit longer down the peg so I can fish away from myself, so the fish have a little bit more confidence, and literally just filled my pot up with chunky fish and margin mix, so it's going to sink down to the bottom. And as I've layered it, the first layer I've put in with the ground bait, then I've put a few loose offerings of dead maggots as a taste because I'm going to be fishing bunches of them, and then covered it back over with more ground bait. I've found the line and my marker, and I've cooked it in, and literally a couple of fish have popped up there, a couple of fish have popped up there, and I've just started picking off fish off both lines, about 6 or 7 fish. And that is a key thing about that marker as well. Because of the depth I'm fishing, I want to keep things tight, because when these fish do come in, they're generally big fish, and the tails, as they start turning, things start to move around, particles start to move. That's why I'm feeding 6s and corn. I like to feed bigger particles, and my ground bait and my dead maggots. I like stuff to stay as concentrated as I could possibly keep it without the fish damaging it too much, not throwing bait everywhere. So I always pick out my spot and try and keep it as accurate as I can, so everything stays as tight as it possibly can for the situation that you've got. Now the peg I'm currently fishing hasn't got one of these, a pallet, and I did mention about how good they are to fish to, especially in margins. Why are they so good? Obviously it's one big expanse where fish can find safety, shade, and it's a lovely little sanctuary where they like to get in and munch and feed. And one of the reasons is it's one of the cleanest parts of the peg. We're constantly dragging nets out, so there's always a little bit of an undulation sometimes, but there's next to no silt, so all this area is pretty much clean. But we always give them like a subconscious free offering all the time. Every time we fill our pots up, a little bit will drop out, it will drop you through, little bits of timber will drop in front in between your nets. So there's always something dripping and happening in front of a pallet, and the fish are cute with this. They know that that's where they're going to find something to eat. So if I had got one of these today, I'd be fishing there, and I'd have cleaned this out. I'd have made me a nice little clean area here, so I could have found that 12 to 18 inches there. I'd have fished in the deeper water here, and there would have been some ground bait, and there would have been some bigger particles and some pellets, and more than likely we would have caught some carp and lots of other fish, because they just love being underneath these things. Oh, you know, there's that many fish there now. I've been dripping just little bits of ground bait in on with a little pot on the pole, but it gets to a point when there's that many fish there and that many tails that there's not enough there to sustain them, to be fair, and that's why they keep disappearing on me. So that is when I'll swap over to the big pot. Literally every other fish, or every 2-3 fish, just sort out the feeding again, but there definitely isn't enough to keep everybody happy with a small pot on anymore. But that generally happens, so we'll take that off and switch to the old big pot. Worms has been good though, mate.
It has been.
Yeah, it's been a good bite, definitely been a good bite. A few dead reds, double corn at times. It just pays to just keep alternating.
How many bits of worm do you put?
2s, 3s. That was on 2. You just get like a real, you know, thing going on, and it's just moving in it, and it attracts a fish. And obviously there's 3 chunks with all juices and everything hanging out. You know what I mean?
Let your worms hang out.
Let your worms and your juices hang out, you know what I mean? It ain't gonna hurt nothing. There you go. 3 of them.
That's interesting.
What's that, mate?
Why have you just slapped your worm?
He deserved it.
That's not very nice.
No, it just stuns them and start, you know, because they start to give hooks. I mean, if I stuck an hook in you, you'd dance, wouldn't you? Well,
probably.
I've stuck an hook in 3 of them then, and they all dance. So once they start dancing, I've always just slap it over. It stuns them. They all hang loose again, and it stops them wrapping over your hook. So if you hook a fish, you ain't gonna get. You're getting hook into the fish in the fish's mouth instead of a hook and bits of worm and something else, so it'll stop me losing the fish. And then it's a case of pure and simple, swing it out and then find your spot and then lower her back down. that's been an awesome short session again, and I think, and I make this the last fish, we'll have a look what we've caught. We've had some proper big size mirrors and commons and old F1s, lots of little of the new little F1s that Phil's recently put in, but it's been a day to match the weather without a shadow of a doubt. Would you agree, Ad?
Definitely.
Wonderful. Let's have a look at what we've got. That's the end. Like I say, I have another fantastic day at Larford. I'm not going to get the carp out and drag them up the bank and take catch shots. It's been a baking hot day and I don't want to stress them any more than what they've already been stressed, so we'll just tip them straight back. What we'll do, so you can see, like I say, I've caught some real nice fish, real big mixed bag. The F1s have already gone back, but as you can see, we've had some nice quality, hard fighting Larford Lakes fish over the chunky fish, some pellets, mixing between worms, double worm, treble worm, bunches of maggots, double corn, hard pellets, just varying the baits. One thing I did say about when the particles start to spread after the fish have moved around, it does pay to just move away from your initial feeding area, and we've picked up lots of fish during this session, just coming a metre this side, half a metre past it, just picking the fish. They're taking up all the other loose offerings that are just dropping off from the initial area that you fed, that have been moved by tail patterns and fish swirling away after you've hooked them. But it's been enjoyable, and I'll see you next time on another episode of the Ministry of Bait.